So the reason that I kind of wanted, the reason that I kind of wanted to talk about this today, or it's been, I guess, a topic is I was listening to somebody, I can't really remember who it was, and they were talking about fear. And I started thinking about our podcast, and I started thinking about, how we've kind of talked about fear, but we've never really dove into it. And, I think a lot of times when we're talking about fear, we're talking about the fear of the unknown. We've talked about the fear of getting sick at one point, the fear of, just not being able to do your daily routine and how that's changed. But I do not think that we have specifically addressed not only some of our fears, but how we cope with that. And a lot of the listeners have been kind of like, the stuff that they really enjoy is when we give our own little take on it and like kind of make it personal to them. So I kind of wanted to dive into just not only what do we think fear is, but kind of make it a little more personal, and maybe some of what do you fear? What does that look like? How do you handle it? All three of us, and just kind of address that. I don't know what y'all's thoughts are or your brain is on that, if that's too deep, if that's not something you're interested in. I don't know.
I'm completely okay with talking about
it. Yeah, run it up.
All right, so I'm kind of going to keep the first part of that. I think that was actually kind of good.
Yeah.
Oh, the 15th cup of coffee.
Why don't you start with it?
With what? What I just said?
What is fear?
Well, what is fear? I think that, the question of what is fear, I think there's kind of two meanings of it. I think like when someone says, well, what are you fearful of or what are you scared of? I think the first part is, you talk about stuff that scares you where it's like, snakes or whatever. Like that's
there's like an external and an internal.
Right. So, if you're talking about something like fear, like what do you fear? Well, it's not that necessarily that I fear snakes. It's that I don't like snakes, or I don't fear spiders, but
I prefer not to come in contact.
If I come in contact with a snake, it's on site. But what I'm saying is that the deeper root of fear is something that I think is constructed in your brain. And I think that it has a lot to do with sometimes lack of confidence, lack of preparation, and just, the idea of maybe you're stepping out of your comfort zone and that causes you to fear something. I think that there's a lot of levels to it, and I think it applies to different people in different ways. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's 100% a mental thing, but it's like we've talked about it before. Your brain is like a defense mechanism for keeping you alive and keeping you safe. So whenever, say you're scared of heights or something, and it like goes back to the visualization thing, but in a negative way. Like you visualize like so much fear, and so you get it so worked up in your head, and then by the time you do it, you're kind of just like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. But beforehand, you can like hardly breathe because your brain's telling you, hey, don't go up there because something bad could happen.
Yeah. What do you think, D?
What I think the fear that we're talking about is more of like the fear of failure, fear of not being enough, fear of whatever your insecurities are, fear of not being perfect. Like, we're not necessarily talking about like, well, I'm scared of,
heights.
Bugs. Right. Because those things usually aren't holding us back from becoming our best self. It's the fear of the other things, the more intrinsic things that are what kind of hold us back. And I guess the first thing that I'll say is to me, fear is not real. And the quicker that you can kind of grasp that and take that and run with it, I feel like the better off you'll be, because fear is is your brain. It's just thoughts. Like it's a false thing that your brain has created to try and prevent you from doing something. Fear often causes us to not think rationally. Fear makes us ultimately become fight or flight, like kind of puts us in this state of mind where we're not putting forth our best like effort mentally. And I think that the quicker that we can kind of say, all right, in this moment, do I feel fearful? Yeah, well, the quicker we can like breathe through it and convince ourselves that that fear is really just an illusion, then we can actually like make some steps forward. But if you consistently allow fear to dictate and control what you see, how you feel, what you think, then you're going to be held down and changed by it. You know what I mean? And as soon as you can break through, like that liberating feeling of getting through it, really, really kind of like double vaults you to another level.
Well, it's one of those things of, doing something that makes you uncomfortable, right? Like if you're fearful of something, then more times than not, it's going to make you uncomfortable. But when you get done with it, that's that liberating feeling of, I was uncomfortable, I did it, I nutted up and did it, and it really wasn't even that bad.
Is there a difference between being fearful and nervous?
Yeah.
All right. Well, like in what way?
To me, okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
For me, like being nervous, like there's moments like in games or whatever, you can be nervous about a play or nervous about an at bat or nervous about something. Not fearful of it. I'm just like a little like, to me, nervous maybe more of like the physical feeling, like biological feeling, whereas the fear is more of the mental piece. But I wouldn't say that you can kind of look at it both ways, that nerves come from fear, but nerves are also oftentimes just kind of like a pre-existing like response. Like if I'm going up for a bat, I'm like, man, I'm a little nervous right now. But then as soon as I get up there, all that goes away. You know what I mean? So, I mean, fear to me normally is something that kind of holds on to you a little bit more than nerves may.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think nerves is more just like an on-edge feeling type deal. And then when you're like truly fearful of something, that can feel like a crumbling type of mentality. Like, I hated public speaking for a long, long time. And there'd be times like I would literally debate like skipping class because I knew how to like give a presentation that day or something like that. And that wasn't like, I thought I was just going to get up there and just like everyone's going to laugh at me and like all this stuff. Goes back to a few things. And then you do it and it literally is like over in 4 minutes.
Right, but to you those 4 minutes feel like an hour.
Yeah, but then you get done and you sit down, you're like, oh yeah, I could do that again. I wish I could do it again because I just shanked it.
So
I was so nervous.
does being nervous, like, does that lead to you becoming more fearful? You see what I'm saying? Is it the opposite way around? Like if you're fearful, I guess it could be both. If you're fearful of something, when you're about to do that act, you become nervous. But it also could be, if you are nervous about whatever it may be, you're nervous about having to go to class and speak, and then when you get to class, you become fearful, or does it just trigger that fearful memory, I guess? That's kind of the interesting little dynamic of it, because I feel like they both kind of go hand in hand. So because Dan, you feel like fear is made up, which I'm totally with you. I do believe that when you start fearing something, that is like something that you are putting into your brain. But do you still become fearful to an extent of certain things in life?
Absolutely. I mean, to sit there and say that you're going to go through life and
not be fearful.
Yeah, even if you see fear, something that's not real, something that's kind of made up or an illusion, you're still going to have moments where you're fearful of certain things, whether that's, just fearful of, like you said, the unknown, fearful of what's going to come next, or fearful that, I'm not going to be enough in the game of baseball or whatever. Like those times pop up because fear often to me gets generated from like almost like the father of lies is what I'll call it. We're all three of us here, big believers and stuff, and God is somebody that obviously presents truth, and not that there's some fear that doesn't come with that, because like even Moses was kind of like, hey, yo, God, like, are you sure about this? Like, I'm scared that you're asking me to do this.
Well, think about Noah.
Oh, I know. Like, my man, he's the OG conspiracy theorist. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that the biggest thing is for us, what a lot of the fear boils down to is what other people are going to think. Because the reason I say that is because, like Mitch just said, he was fearful of public speaking, and part of that came with, like, he thought that people were just going to, like, laugh at him when he got up there, or somebody saying that they're fearful they might not be enough because they think that their peers will judge them for their actions or judge them for what they say. And oftentimes that how other people would look at us or judge us comes into our mind with whatever decision it is that we're making. I don't really have examples for that, but I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of like, I'm fearful of this, and I'm also scared of what these people are going to think or say about me after this happens, or after I do this presentation or this meeting, or after I go hit,
Right.
So that's part of it for me. I want to like almost debunk fear a little bit. Like we were talking about, fear for me is not real.
Mm-hmm.
And why it's so important that the brain and like the mental component is far more superior than the physical component. Just because I think that, like we just said, when you get fearful, I mean, most people can already imagine something in their mind of an event where they were fearful, and your palms will start to get a little bit sweaty, your breath starting to shorten up a little bit, and you feel like the world around you is going a little bit faster than it was before. And I just think that in those moments, it's so important to really like breathe. And I know that we've talked about this so many times, and probably it's like beating a dead horse, but there's like a quick little tool that you can use, and it's like the whole breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Well, if you do it 6 times, really breathe in through your nose really big, and then when you blow out through your mouth,
in a straw,
like you're blowing in a straw. If you do that 6 times,
like
it
resets
essentially,
the body or something. Like,
yeah, like it like does something with your brain where it gets you back into like your present frame of mind. So, and it like really slows your heartbeat down. It kind of allows you to gain control again over your brain, and not having it dictate, having that fear dictate what it is that you're seeing or how you're seeing or hearing and all those kinds of things. So that's like the first start for me in fear, is understanding what you can do to combat it when those certain situations happen, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and probably when you're doing the breathing technique, you're just giving your brain oxygen and kind of slowing your body down and your heartbeat down, and you're kind of saying, hey, like, let's take a second here, let's slow down, it's going to be okay. But I do think fear is just something that, a lot of people really struggle with. And I think part of it is people try to control stuff that they have no control over, like the opinions of others or what somebody else is going to do or somebody else's problem or whatever it may be, and they put that on themselves, and that contributes to whatever fear that they are feeling, if that makes sense, which, you can't control everything, which goes back to, our faith of the plan's already decided. It's not in my control. If I cannot control it, then I don't need to be fearful of it or really put my brain around it. But that's kind of hard to do in everyday life, I would say. And I kind of want to dive into this. What are some of the things that we are fearful of? Mine's not, I can go first if you all want me to, it doesn't matter. But mine isn't necessarily, like, I'm not fearful of something or something happened to me or anything like that. I'm more fearful of like a lifestyle, I guess. You want me to go first?
Mm-hmm. Well, you already started.
Yeah, keep rolling. I'm feeling it.
My fear, and I heard this story, and ever since I've heard this story, it has kind of changed the way that I have lived my life. And it comes from Ray Lewis's book. And Ray tells this story about how he wants to be, like his biggest fear. And he tells this story of, he says, well, my biggest fear is this. And he says, essentially, I envision myself after I pass away and after I die, and I go to heaven, and I'm sitting there at the gates, right? And so they're kind of doing roll call. Coach Hines is checking them in. Checking me in, coach. And they're kind of, they're going through, they're making sure everybody's squared away. And then I get up to the front of the line, right? So I've been waiting there. And he looks at me and he goes, doctor, father of four, devoted Christian man, great father. And I go, I was one of those things. Like I was a dad. He goes, you weren't. I said, but that's not me. And he goes, you're right. That's who you were supposed to be. That is like my biggest fear, is that when my time is up, and this is pretty deep, when my time is up, I have not accomplished the things that I was set here to do. And like, I fell short. And so like, people always ask me, like I had somebody yesterday tell me like, dude, your drive is incredible. And that's because I'm terrified that I'm just going to be like, life is short. I think a lot of people listen to this, and you all know someone can be taken from you in a second, and they're gone. And you have no control over that, right? If for something were to happen to me tomorrow and I were to pass away, my story would have a period. It would be an end. And I'm terrified that when that happens, I'm not going to have maximized my time here on earth to where I've done what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, I don't know if you all feel like that, but ever since I read that story out of his book, I was like, holy smokes. Like, am I doing everything I can in the day to get done what I need to get done? And like every time, like when I text you all, I was like, what, 4:25 or something like that this morning? When I text you all asking something like that.
I didn't look at the clock, brother.
Well, brother, you were busy last night doing walk-off things, but like when I get up in the morning and I'm like, man, I don't want to get up. That is exactly what I think about. Like, am I going to do what I need to do? Now, when you're looking at my fear and you're trying to like debunk it, okay, can I control everything that I'm really fearful of? No. But what can I do? When it goes back to our process of like the one thing, I can make sure that whatever I'm doing today makes me a day better or 1% better of, hey, like you are accomplishing these things that, in my brain, I feel like I've been sent here to do. And if I do that, then I should be good. But that is like one of my biggest fears. I don't know if you all have comments on that.
Well, I think it just taps into like finding your motivation.
Right. And that is my motivation.
Right.
You know
tapping into that, and that's what gets you to go stretch outside your comfort zone, and the drive to get you up out of bed every morning. It's finding what clicks for you. you know, and that story clicked for you.
Yeah. What's yours, Mitch?
I'd say for me, it's like, just like, I guess you could call it like, you know, fear of maybe not being good enough, or, you know, because like my whole profession now is, you know, making clothes and hats and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you know, 3 years ago, I was graduating with the sports management degree. Like, I can't draw. I don't know how to use Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator or anything like that. So it's like, I get into this circumstance where basically it is fight or flight, but then, you know, you see a little success, you see a little down. But I think for me, it's just like, you know, why me? Like I said, I didn't have any of the skills to do this. So it's like clicking into that confidence of, why not me? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why don't I deserve, like, if I put in the work and I figure X, Y, and Z out and I make it happen, like, why can't I be a clothing line designer? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just battling with that. Like, if I drop something and it doesn't turn out the way, you know, I don't get the love that I think, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, I'm like doing this for me in a sense. Like, if I think it's dope and people don't rock with it, then it's like, whatever, bro. Like, I thought it was cool. I like it. So, and then you do some stuff and you're like, I don't think it's that cool. And then it gets all the love. So it's like, kind of like just being yourself, and people will take it at that, like, take it or leave it, you know, but like, I don't need to go away from who I am just to try to appease others. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of just rambling.
And I think that you being in the position that you are, making the clothes and merch that you do, you really do have to trust your process and yourself and your vision, because it's not like, you know, in the beginning of all things loyal, the market that we were selling to was nothing like it is right now.
Yeah.
We went from selling, what would you all say, probably Marietta, Atlanta based,
I mean, yeah.
to
Or,
now
I mean, at least Atlanta themed.
Yeah. But I would say most of our market was either A, our friends and family, or B, just people that follow Dansby. I remember us dropping the Instagram account and being ecstatic that we reached 1,000 followers. We're like, dude, like, what? Like, and now you're at 20, close to 25K, which is kind of like, it's kind of growing and growing and growing. So that's telling you that your message is expanding. But it is crazy. And for you to sit there and design clothes, you know, anybody can say that's whack, or you should have done this, you should have done that, but that's not what.
And I'd say too, it kind of goes back to like when we were talking about mindset and like, you know, those negative thoughts, you know, it's like 10 positive thoughts to 1 negative thought, you know what I'm saying? So like, I'll get 10 comments like, oh, this is fire, fire, fire. And then I'll get one that's like, yo, this is kind of bum. And it's like, that's the only one I fixate on. And then it clicks into that fearful shit of like, maybe it is, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, blah, X, Y, Z. But it's kind of focusing on, I'm working on focusing on doing it for me, do what I think is dope. Because then at the end of the day, if I think it's cool, it's like, you know, who cares? Like,
well, you're just confident in your product.
Yeah.
Dans, what about you?
Man, I feel like I battled a lot of like fears of not being perfect, fears of not being enough, the fear of just like not being successful, not living up to who I thought I was supposed to be. I mean, all those different fears basically line up to the one thing of like, I was fearful that I wouldn't measure up basically to whoever's standards, people watching the games, the front office, my family, my friends, Mal, like anybody and everybody. Like I was fearful that I would never measure up. And I've really been trying to combat that lately with, I've just set out to like really connect with who I believe I'm meant to be. We've talked about that some before. Really diving in on like allowing God to show me who I am and just become that person more and more every day. Whether that's becoming like a leader, becoming somebody that loves on his people, that allows, God's light to shine through him. And each day, if I'm putting attention onto that, then everything else will take care of itself. And that, God's glory and everything shining through me, to help expand his kingdom and all those things, like putting that as my main perspective each day has really allowed me to kind of push those fears to the side, because I'm not doing it for what people around me are going to think or how they're going to judge me, because I'm only being judged by one, and so that's where I've kind of put my focus and energy, and that's made a big difference for me, being able to kind of like ease the tension and ease the the fear of not being good enough, and so it's not that I'm perfect at it, and I'll revert back to it some, but for the most part, it's helped me a lot. So that's kind of where I put my energy and focus.
I was just going to say, it goes back to being consistent. Like you have to work on this stuff every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like the mental aspect, like, you work out every day, your body starts to change. Same thing with the mental. Like you need to work on it every single day to start to get the changes that you ultimately want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't just think about lifting weights and then not lift them and expect your body to change.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
The weights don't lift themselves.
Yeah.
And
Same thing with the head.
As Dansby said, your mental state and that muscle up there, that controls everything. Everything that you do, from blinking your eyes to forming thoughts, like you have to strengthen that thing, and you have to get it, the necessary amount of sleep, the necessary amount of water, the necessary amount of food.
Well, I was going to say, it's essentially a muscle.
Yeah, it is a muscle.
Yeah.
And you have to treat it right, because the second you don't,
it notices.
Yes, like if you have not had enough water. I experienced this yesterday at football practice with like 4 players. They go, "I have a headache. Have you had enough water today?"
Go look at drink this morning.
Yeah, have you had enough water today? And they go, "No." And I'm like, well, the first thing that your body does is it pulls from your brain.
Yep. And
that's why you have a headache. So you need to go drink water. And if you're already thirsty, then you're already dehydrated.
Yeah, you're already behind.
You're behind the game. And so you have to treat your body like, as we say it jokingly all the time, my body's my temple. You got to treat it as such, because if you do not exercise your brain, if you do not exercise your other muscle groups, your body's just going to feel terrible.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that right now.
Why is that?
Well, I kind of treated my body like shit over the weekend, and I've just been like, dude, like drained. Like Saturday was my homie's birthday, so obviously we went like top golf during the day, like went to a nice dinner and then drank a little bit after. So like, even that was Saturday, bro, and I'm still
getting
like,
old,
bro. Like, I think I was like texting Emily this morning. I was like, dude, I don't know what's happening. Like, I'm not like tired per se. I just feel like my body's drained.
Yeah,
it's because I don't think I had 1 glass of water on Saturday.
Yeah, that's how
and
I
there's
feel.
I gotta bounce. I got to. Sorry.
What are you doing?
I gotta do this other podcast for this lady.
Wow.
Switching up on the team.
I was ready at 10:20.
Yeah. See you, bro.
All right, bro.
Yeah. We paid.
Yeah, good game last night, huh?